Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share a YouTube video that I saw recently. It's from France 24 News, I think, and it's called Long COVID, What Have We Learned? So I'm making this video on the fly just to recommend that you guys go watch that. I guess you can type in France 24, Long COVID, something like that. But it was really good. It was long. It was longer. I think it might have been over an hour because I think it was like a news report, probably from that news channel. But it's like British people. Well, it was like the anchor was British, and then one of the guys that he was interviewing, who was a doctor, I think he was French, but he also had an American on there, and then another British doctor, I believe, and then another British anchor. So, I don't know what news channel it is. I'm not familiar with it, but I think it's a news channel from abroad. But they did a really, really good job. Whenever I find videos like this, I'm gonna point you guys in that direction. I did do a video recently on another interview with that Dr. Akiko, what is it, Akiko Iwasaki? I think that's her name. And she's, Japanese American doctor here from Yale, who is definitely, she's like, long COVID is real. It's a real physiological, physical condition. And this interview and this news report is basically making the same argument. And so the news anchor, he actually the news anchor that is British, he actually brings his wife, who was a news anchor, and she's suffering from long COVID. So it's he's very professional in the way that he interviews her, but he does say this is my better half. So you can tell that this was something personal that happened to them. She actually had to stop working. And I think she's hasn't been working for about a year because she's dealing with long COVID. And then they bring in doctors and experts and other people, U.S., UK, France, that are all saying the same thing, that long COVID is a real thing. It's actually, there are actually studies and things that are showing that people have these actual physiological changes in their body. They do talk about, therapies, like for ME/CFS, because I think that's one of, his wife's primary symptoms, and that she did I forget what it's called. It's like they recommend exercise, like gradually increasing, a gradually more rigorous exercise type of thing. And that's like a therapy for ME/CFS. And she did it until she got to the point where she said, I was on the floor, I couldn't see. She said, I literally like went blind. I could not see anything. And that's when I realized that this type of therapy doesn't work. And I have seen a lot of people with ME/CFS talk about how that type of therapy doesn't work. It's, because you have that post-exertional malaise, and it just makes it even worse. Sorry, I got scared. There was like a noise at the door. It was it was longer. If you want to watch it in sections, I think I did one half one day and another half the next day. But he talks to all of these different professionals and gets their opinions. Well, not just their opinions, but what we know at this time about long COVID. They share some good news. There's good news, and then there's like bad news. I think the good news is that it's definitely a real illness, right? We're not dealing with something that is fake or psychosomatic or anything like that. They're like, this is a real illness. The bad news is, what are we going to do about it? And there are doctors that are denying that it's a real thing. And they do talk about how, there are some doctors out there that believe that it is a psychosomatic type of issue. But they go more into it. I recommend watching it. It was, and I have been saying this, and he actually does say it. It is mentioned in this report that it's not, we're not going to be able, doctors, the medical system, they are not going to be able to ignore this. Whereas they have ignored these issues before, like with previous outbreaks that we've had, like I think what was it, swine flu and things like that. People have developed long COVID type symptoms from that. And of course, Lyme disease, ME/CFS, we know that all of those conditions are pre-existing. But what they're saying now is that there are going to be so many sick, very sick people that it is going to strain the medical system, and they will have no choice but to pay attention now. Even though there are a lot of people that are suffering with these conditions, it's going to become so overwhelming. And you guys have heard me say this over and over again on this channel. There's going to be a tsunami of chronically ill patients. And right now we're kind of at the beginning. The way that I see it, a lot of these people are where I was and where some of us were many years ago, right? These people are where I was maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, where it's like, okay, something is wrong, but maybe it'll go away. Or maybe I can just deal with it. Maybe it's not that bad. And so they're barely getting to that point. Maybe they're seeing one doctor, maybe they're trying, medicine or something. Once you've been sick for 2-3 years, because right now we're in 2023, the longest a person can be chronically ill from COVID is 3 years at this point. And I think his wife, the one that he was interviewing, she got COVID March of 2020. So she's one of the first people, one of the first to get COVID. So she's been dealing with this for 3 years. And she talks about how it's like, okay, maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years. And it's like, okay, well, now it's not going away. So it can't be ignored. And so I think right now people are getting to that point. The first batch of long COVID patients are starting to probably get to the point where they're like, I'm not getting better. It's been 3 years or close to 3 years, and I'm not getting better. So we're going to start seeing the first batch of people coming into the medical system, and doctors are going to start seeing these people trickle in little by little. And then within the next 3 years, it's going to be the following batch of people trickling in, and it's just going to be, they're going to start to see, okay, I have like 4 or 5 patients that are complaining about similar issues since they had COVID, and they're, they say that they're not getting better. We've tried a couple of things, they're not getting better. Eventually it'll get to the point where it's like, okay, I have a lot of patients with this. Like, we really need to do something about this. You can't, it's one thing to discredit one person or 2 people and say, oh, well, your issues are mental. When you have 10 patients, 15 patients, and a lot of these people are going to be hospitalized as well, depending on your severity of chronic illness. Some of them are going to be going to the hospital. So, they do address that in this interview, and they talk about how it is, the medical system is not going to have a choice but to invest in research and treat these people and figure out a treatment for these people. And that will also help the rest of us, people with Lyme disease, people with that already had pre-existing ME/CFS, even people with multiple sclerosis, and all of these long-term conditions. And so to me, I really think that this is going to be a huge turning point. And that's the way that this news report felt, especially because he had so many people. He had a French guy, he had an American lady, he had, another British guy, and then his wife. And all of those people were like, this is real. This is not a psychosomatic illness. This is a real thing. So you got people from around the world, doctors from around the world that are saying, no, this is absolutely real. And these people are sick and they're not getting better. So it feels, there was, like I said, there was good news and bad news in that report. But I think the good news is that this is going to have widespread effects on the rest of us who suffer from chronic conditions, not just people with long COVID. Because I don't think it's like long COVID. It's a syndrome that affects people post-infection. And we've been seeing that over and over again, especially from Akiko Iwasaki, who's here in the U.S. She's kind of the one saying like this is not new. This has already existed. It's pre-existing in other infections and conditions, but now we're gonna have to take it seriously because it's gonna overwhelm the healthcare system and put a real strain on it. So we need to figure something out. So I highly recommend it. It was called, I think, France 24, long COVID. I already forgot the title of it. Just Google France 24 long COVID, and it should come up here on YouTube. So I highly recommend it. And yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.